Okay, great. Look, I've got really the cushiest job of emceeing for today because I've got 2 panel sessions which basically self-moderate. This one now is, look, we're well aware of the time of the day it is, and we've all been sitting down and we're starting to feel all of that enthusiasm start to flow out of us. Maybe we're thinking about dinner at Parliament House. It's time to liven things up a bit, and it's time for all of you to get engaged in the dialogue this afternoon, and really a critical part of that understanding of how to talk about your science when you're put on the spot tomorrow when you're meeting with your politician. So we've got a couple of people, as I said, who self-moderate and will run this session without really any much interference from me, at least I hope so. We've got Rod Lamberts and Will Grant, both from the Centre for Public Awareness of Science at ANU. These guys are professionals in the area of science communication, how to get your message out. I'm not going to blather on here any longer. I'm going to hand you over to Rod and Will to talk about how you're going to present your science and how you're going to present it to us this afternoon.
I just get really nervous if there's no noise while I'm walking.
Oh, maybe we're in the wrong place. We just got a 4-hour session for you. You're going to take a lot of notes and there'll be a test at the end. No one's happy about that?
I think they're really ready to take those notes and they'll be getting it all down.
What we're supposed to be here to do is to give you an injection of talking with people who aren't scientists, kind of people who are politicians, just getting your science out of the lab, basically, speaking like human beings to other human beings. We are going to spend, this session is going to be in 2 halves. Of course, one of the halves is a lot shorter than the other. The first half, so to speak, will be, you spent a lot of time sitting down today being talked at. Is that true? Lots of people, even older than Will, with greyer hair, just telling you things, informative things, no doubt. The first part of that is we want to tell you a little bit about our background and then do some Q&A with you. So we want to hear your hopes, fears, dreams, aspirations about communicating more broadly. Then,
after that, we're going to turn it over to you and have a little bit of a chance to see how you can practice the skills that you've heard about today to tell the story of your science, how you can get your science down to a 60-second story that might be something that might be of interest to a politician to float their boats to get them interested.
Is anyone worried about that? Could you all deliver your own science story in 60 seconds already? Show of that is a show of hands? Not one hand. Okay, you're going to learn a lot the hard way.
So who are we?
Yeah, who are we? We've just been introduced. We're both working for the Centre for Public Awareness of Science at the ANU. What that means is we talk about science communication, science in the public space. You would have heard of science shows, Questacon and science centres, things like that. We don't do that. We talk more scientist to scientist, scientist to policymaker, or scientist to other grown-ups. And we often don't necessarily act like grown-ups to do that. We write a lot in the public space, on The Conversation, The Drum, places like that. We do sessions on ABC Radio. We have a stage show which we pretty much call Evidence Porn. It's a theme-based stage show in a pub where we talk to different experts about sciencey things based on themes. So it's a lot more human, a few facts, but mostly it's about human stories. Do we do anything else?
We do research.
There's research. We're academics. I forgot the academic part.
You forget to say that. You know,
credibility stamp.
But a lot of the research of our centre is looking at the interaction between scientists and different end user groups, whether they are wider public audiences, whether it's policymakers, whether it's industry, all of those sorts of areas. And so from our centre and from our own experience, we've seen and heard a lot of the interesting war stories about how people have interacted with these different user groups and good ways to go about it and bad ways to go about it. And so what we really wanted to do in this first part of the session is try to hear from you the things that you've been wondering about. You've had some really expert people talking to you throughout the day.
And now you have us.
But a chance to ground truth that, to use us as a sounding board to say, well, I heard this thing said before, is this the way I should do it? I've heard about key messages perhaps, but what should I do there? Or should I be thinking about communicating with a politician in a different way. So rather than us talk to you, we'd rather listen to you and hear your questions and have a bit of a conversation for the first half of this session.
As I say, before we throw to that, Will and I often write on fairly controversial topics, climate change and things like this. So we've been flogged every way you can pretty much get flogged between us in the public arena. So if you're worried about that sort of thing, you've heard of trolling and all that sort of stuff, we can offer you at least a warm, distant hug or try and help you handle that too. So if you have controversial stuff, that's even more fun. It might keep us awake a bit longer at the end of the day before din-dins. So do you want to talk to us or ask us questions or true confessions?
There we go,
We
straight
have
away.
a hand. A microphone will come winging its way eventually.
Hi there, Helen McGregor from the University of Wollongong. I actually wanted to ask that in the last session and about misinformation. So how do we correct misinformation that might be out there? I do climate science, so obviously there is a lot of misinformation out there, but other spheres, other bits of information get in the public arena, and how do we get them out of there?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating question, and it might be a question that's coming up more and more for a lot of different research areas. You know, with the rise of the internet, everyone's got an opinion on every branch of science almost, and climate change is one of them. But you know, we're seeing that in so many other research spaces as well. Now, we don't always have a chance to correct misinformation. If you're talking to a politician tomorrow, you're only going to be there for a few minutes. You're not going to dive in there and say, you may have heard something, this is not true. If there is misinformation that comes to you, I think then there's a chance to correct. But I think telling the accurate story is more important than going out there searching for the misinformation and trying to fix that. Would you?
Yeah, and also I think you've got to pick your battles and you've got to be aware of what you can and can't achieve. And quite often, particularly in the context of this event, the important thing for you guys probably tomorrow, I say guys generically, guys and gals, I apologise. For you folks tomorrow is to set up some kind of relationship. Tell a story with the politician briefly. Make you look like you're trustworthy or at least interesting to talk to, maybe relevant to their needs. Trying to correct a whole bunch of facts online, out in the public space, at a presentation on the news, if you're getting interviewed much, is very difficult. But if you can set up look at you being an interesting person to speak with, a trusted source of information, people may come to you later. A lot of people talk to us about going out there with this agenda of I will fix the facts. And people have, I don't know how many times over the years said, do you want to join forces and we'll set up an internet site where we correct all the science information on the internet. I'm not paraphrasing, that was one way it was approached, or it was the advance was made to us. You're not going to do that. So pick your battles, go small, set up relationships first, and then maybe you can kind of wedge the door open for factual exchanges. You're in the toughest one though with climate change, so develop a thick skin too. Rub yourself with sandpaper every night, because as you probably already know, you'll cop it.
Just adding to that, the importance of developing a relationship. People don't change their thinking. They don't change their thinking very much at all. And if you were to go out and correct a fact that someone might have, chances are they won't believe you. B, it may make them less disposed to listen to you in the future. And so I think it's much more important to listen to them and build a relationship. If you get a chance to steer them in a better direction than the misinformation, that's great. But don't think that telling them they're wrong is going to be very helpful.
That probably didn't help you at all, right? You knew
I think there's a hand pointing there.
a hand point. We've covered everything.
Hi, Jeremy Brownlee from Griffith University and Secretary of Science Technology Australia. Tomorrow I'm meeting with Jackie Lamberts. So I was just wondering if you could give some advice to people in the room that might be meeting a potential personality that they see through the media. Is it likely that what we see there is going to be matching up with our experience in that office, and how should we be preparing for a meeting that we might be feeling particularly nervous about?
Do you want to see first if anyone wants to swap with you?
Yeah, that'll be good.
Anyone want Jackie? We've got
There
two
you
who
go.
want Jackie. Job done.
Look,
Okay.
that's a really good question. And it's really interesting. You're going to be meeting a whole range of different politicians tomorrow, many of whom you might not have heard of, many others you might have seen only through the media. And so, what you see in the media is not their totality. Whoever it is, even if it's the most prominent politician, you'll only have seen their opinions on a few different aspects. Most politicians are quite intelligent people that are interested in a lot about the world and interested in doing good. Whether they're from a political party or an independent that you agree with on other issues doesn't mean that they don't want to do good things. And so if you can frame whatever your issue is, think about your issue in ways that talk to the values that they have, then you're going to be in a good place. You might not share things about the rest of the world, but if you can find things you share, then you're going to do well.
Yep, connect with values, connect with the electorate. Surely you've been told this already. Like, what are the critical issues in your MP's electorate? Find something that makes your conversation turn to that. If your research doesn't fit with that, that's all right. Talk about something else. Let them know you know something about them. They're human conversations. They've just got to be quick. Don't waste their time. The most successful interactions with politicians are short, sharp and clear. Short, sharp. It's been lecturing all day. Short, sharp and clear. And don't expect them to pull information out of you necessarily. You've got to be prepared to get there, deliver your thing and potentially get out. If you stop early, you might surprise them. They might actually then want to ask you questions as well. Worth a shot.
Don't feel like you've got to fill all of the void with your words. That's a dangerous place to be.
You're looking for rapport, you know. You want to connect somehow. First thing first, connect somehow. If you like the model on their desk, a picture on their wall, that might be better than going, I'm a biochemist and biochemistry is important. You watch the eyes glaze over and that'll be the end of the conversation. Nothing wrong with biochemistry, it's just not what everyone likes. It might not be a big issue in Tasmania. I don't know, maybe it is. Sir, in the middle.
Ross Thompson from the Institute for Applied Ecology at the University of Canberra. I'm interested in your guys' experience of the sort of institutional ways of communicating, so our university or CSIRO media office or whatever, as opposed to you communicating directly yourself and having a media presence yourself. How do you weigh those two things up, and are there sort of, you know, things that you would put through one pathway as opposed to putting them through another?
How badly does your institution need you?
Desperately.
Do whatever you want. There's a fine line. Look, we're lucky. We kind of, part of our job is to, I think the technical term is shit stir. Like, it's part of what we do is nudge things along a bit, not without facts or any reason behind it, but we have a very broad scope of interaction here. A lot of you won't, but have you tested it, I suppose is my first question. If you've got to try and represent yourself in the public space that supports your institutional beliefs but not yours, I'd back out of that conversation entirely.
Everyone has to live within their own institutional constraints. I mean, CSIRO researchers are very different from university researchers in terms of their ability to speak with the public. That's conditions of your job. So they're different, and everyone has to understand the conditions in which you are required to speak. I think that's an interesting point about how institutions communicate and how individuals communicate. They carry different gravitas. If a university was to come out and say an official position, very different from one individual researcher. But I think we can draw a lot from both sides. It's getting in front of a politician and saying what is important about whatever that particular thing is, and how it can be of benefit to Australia and to that politician's future.
It's
career.
Also the most successful people in the blogosphere, on Twitter, out in the social media space, are the ones who throw a bunch of themselves into it. People, whether you admit it or not to yourselves, and whether you're trying to be sciencey or not, you give a toss about human stories, human frailties, human interest and laughs. So there are some pretty decent Twitterers out there. I'm pointing to one down here, and there are probably quite a few of you lurking around in Science Meets Parliament. The reason you're quite successful on Twitter or being well read in broader spaces is because you throw yourself into it. So maybe discuss with your institution how far they're going to let you go. Maybe do a few things that are risque and show them the results, the number of hits, number of comments. If you get speaking engagements, preferably at places they approve of. I think it's worth taking a little risk if you can, because if you don't, then you're just going to be bland and disappear against the backdrop.
But it's the difference between, the journal article type writing, the evidence shows blah, 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 versus telling the story of that research from a personal perspective. I have seen this shark with my own eyes, or I know this thing, or this affects my children. Now, you don't always have to get that sort of stuff, but putting it in your own terms and putting yourself in there as an individual makes it much easier for a politician to listen.
Hi, I'm Francesca from CSIRO. I'm an ecotoxicologist. And we've heard a lot today from journalists and the way that scientists should communicate to journalists and politicians, but I'm wondering a bit more about how we should communicate to the general public. Sometimes I feel like there's particularly I've seen in the case with CSIRO, there's sort of a lack of understanding amongst the general public about what we actually do and how valuable our science is. So I'm wondering if perhaps scientists need to think more about advertising their work in a more general
You've got to
arena.
step back. I'd counsel, I get this question a lot. I've spoken at CSIRO, Science Communicators and others, and the first question I ask people who ask that question is, well, what are you trying to achieve in the first place? Because it's seen as this intrinsic good. I must make sure more people know about us and me and science, and if people don't understand it or like it, we failed. How are you measuring that? You know, what are you measuring it against, and what are you trying to achieve is really important. It sounds like I'm kind of diverting your question, but I'm not. The point, this whole sort of we must communicate, people must know about us and understand us, is very rarely questioned very deeply. And so I'd start there first. So what are you trying to achieve? With whom and why? And then you can start to work into strategies and techniques.
And can I build on that, that the general public is as diverse as, well, it's incredibly diverse, and there are so many different publics within that. And just thinking of your own area, ecotoxicology, that you would have some people who are very, very interested in, they don't do your science, but they would be very, very interested in the results. You could imagine park rangers, or people that might be working in mine sites, or farmers, or hobbyist groups, all sorts of people that from a diverse background would actually know a fair bit about the related things. They might be bird watchers, so they know a fair bit about ecology. Now, they don't know your science, but they'd be very knowledgeable on the surrounding things, so they would actually be able to understand your science quite quickly. You know, someone who doesn't care about it, they spend all their time doing very different things, you know, that A, they would be very difficult to communicate your research to, but also B, why? You know, I think it's much more important to think about the people who would actually be able to use your research and think about how then it could benefit them.
You get in the danger of, like, people occasionally try and tell me how good AFL is. I don't get it. I'm a rugby guy, you know, and so people want to tell me AFL's awesome and the games are spectacular and the men wear short shorts. I don't get it. And the more I hear people tell me about AFL, I do the classic anti-science or climate position. I shut down further and further, and I find myself liking AFL even less. I've got nothing against AFL, and I'm sure at least 3 people in the room also like it, but the thing is that trying to convince people because you love it isn't enough, and that's an unfortunate trap we fall into. Sometimes you just got to step away or change target.
Emma Johnson, University of New South Wales. So we've heard a lot today about the problem with bringing problems to politicians. So we've been told to come along with solutions. Now, there are probably quite a few people in the audience who don't think the world is completely rosy, that the funding of science has some problems, that perhaps their career doesn't look that secure. How do you recommend people bring up those really important issues and bring them to the attention of the people they're meeting with tomorrow, but in a way that is palatable and that still allows us to imbue them with the excitement of science? So give us some compliment sandwich style techniques.
Great question, terribly put, but I like the way you stood. There you go. I go, Will.
Yeah, okay. Look,
Sorry, AFL.
I think that we can't dance around if there is a problem, you know, and yes, it's you don't want to dive into a politician and say, look, climate change is killing the world, or we're looking at ecotoxicology again, and there's something really terrible going. You know, you need to build up a story of who you are and what the problem is. And I think you're right, you know, focus on the solutions. So there's a really useful story structure that we talk to a lot of our students and a lot of clients. It's very simple. It's the and, but, therefore story structure. You might have heard it before. It's what writers for screenplays, I think the writers of South Park actually use it a lot, because, you know, you get a story and you write a lot of and, you know, one character, Cartman did this, and then another character did this, and then another character did this. Now, we think about that in science a lot. We go, and. If you throw a but in there, you know, you start turning around and say, but the problem is, or but, you know, the character in the screenplay, whatever it is, there's an obstacle. What you're starting to get towards is a story structure. You know, it's an obstacle. I think a story doesn't work, and particularly a scientific story doesn't work if you just dump the problem on them. You know, we know a lot about climate change, but we don't have a solution. We know a lot about one particular toxin out there in the environment, and it's killing lots of kangaroos, but we don't have a solution for it yet. That's a really empty conversation because the story doesn't end. Now, yeah, the story isn't fully ended yet, but at least if you can go, therefore, what we need to do next is we need to start limits on a certain toxin, or we need to do, this is the standard, we need to do more research. Okay, that's not the best, but it's at least moving in a direction. It's at least moving in a direction of a solution. So, but, therefore, and I think this is a really useful technique to think about if you're writing your science in 60 seconds, or speaking your science in 60 seconds, which, might be coming up soon.
Quite soon.
A great way of saying what it is where we're at, what our problem is, and what we need to do next.
Yeah, that's the danger. A science paper is quite often just a list of ands. And then we did this experiment, and then we got these results, and then we did another experiment, and then we got these results, and now we need to do further research. And this is what starts to happen. But if you say, and we did this research, and then we did this research, but we discovered we have a whole new direction here that can fix a problem we didn't know we had, therefore we need to do the following. We need to change our direction, get some funding, make the electorate aware, and make it quite, even when you say the but, you can do your and go, but, and make it a bit, shock people. Look at that, everyone jumped, except for a couple. So that's part of the deal. The storytelling techniques aren't just for salespeople trying to sell you a second-hand car. And if you feel a bit dirty using sales and marketing pitches, I'm sorry, you just have to have a shower afterwards. These techniques exist because they work. And storytelling works. There's a lot of detail behind this. We can point you to references and books and workshops and online programs, but they work. So if you really don't feel comfortable with it and you don't want to, that's okay. Maybe it's not quite the job for you, but if you do,
But in fairness, we actually use that structure in our own writing a lot. We actually do say, here's the lit review. We know all of this so far, but we don't know this next thing, and it's important to know because, blah, blah, blah. And therefore, I'm going to go and this is my method. So we actually do use that structure quite a lot implicitly in our science and making it more explicit, really thinking, okay, where's my and, where's my but, and where's my therefore, and putting it explicitly into your words can help you boil your science down into a really short 60-second or whatever.
And sacrifice some detail. You're trained, we're all trained to offer all the detail, all the caveats, all the everything. If you see your conversation with people like this tomorrow as a prelude or a teaser or a flirtation phase, hopefully, start with a few salient facts, but no more. If there are some caveats, that's okay. As long as you don't misrepresent what you're doing, you can leave some things hanging, you can leave some questions in their minds. You've got to entice people. Underneath it all, politicians are very human. They have self-interest like we all do. You've got to appeal to self-interest. You have to appeal to things that humans are interested in. If you march in going, I've got a big problem, my science is important, give me money for my science, your electorate could benefit, you'll get more votes, they'll blank. They get, 30, 40 meetings like that a day sometimes? 5-minute lobbyist after lobbyist. If you want to stand out, you've got to be a little different. Sacrifice some detail. Definitely sacrifice some detail. It's going to hurt, but that's the reality.
I think there's one there.
Is that a hand?
Jackie?
There's a hand.
Okay. Yeah. Just as a follow-up question then, up the back again. Sorry, Jeremy again.
Gentleman at the back.
So once we've had the meeting and we've nailed it with a fantastic 60-second thing, what should we do once we leave the meeting?
Start with knowing what you are going in to achieve when you go in. If you go in going, I want the politician to like me, that's probably not a sufficient KPI.
Or don't go in there thinking I'm going to get $1 billion grant lined up. It's all going to, keep your goals small and manageable and something that can actually easily be achieved. Some of the best outcomes might be making a politician interested enough to come and visit your lab. That's a chance for you to have a much deeper conversation. You can show, okay, here's where we're working on this, and you get a chance to, if they're there in your lab, they're going to be there for half an hour or so. So it might be a nice follow-up, a chance to see what's going on. But if you can keep the sort of follow-up to sort of a fairly, a small, achievable thing, something that doesn't require a budget, doesn't require lots of approvals, lots of discussion, then if they're interested, they'll be able to say yes really easily. And once they've said yes, then you can have more of a conversation and then move on to other things in the future.
You can ask them questions, opening up the opportunity for a follow-up, like, I'll send you that next week, or I'm glad you asked that question, I don't have it with me. Obviously, you'll probably get put off by a staffer, but you can at least try to keep a dialogue open, questions and concerns and follow-up information. But know what you're after when you go in. If you go in unclear about that, then you don't know what you're following up on. have some inkling, some preparation. There was a question.
I think there's one question, but we also
Go
should
ahead.
say that's probably should be our final
Yeah.
question, and then we go over to the 60-seconder for you.
Okay, hi, I'm Kate Sieb from the Institute for Glycomics at Griffith University, and I'm a member of the Australian Society for Microbiology. I was just wondering, how important do you think it is that I'm aware of the stance of who I'm meeting tomorrow on certain issues? I'm going to talk about vaccines, but everything I've read, there's no indication, but I'm very aware from past discussions with people that it's good to know whether they're pro or for. Any suggestions on how to get to that quickly and without making it a big deal?
I think first point, you're researchers, whatever science you are, whatever field you are, finding stuff out is what you do. And so, yes, it's a different field, but if you can find out more about your politician, that's a very sensible thing to do. You can ask around, you can ask people around here. Some of the people that have worked in Parliament might know these things. Google searches are really quite useful. They might not actually have a stance on a particular issue. And so at that point, you can treat them as somewhere in the middle, or perhaps for vaccines, they might just be generally favourably disposed to the idea of vaccination.
You could just ask, and if they say vaccines is a load of crap and it's killing the children, smile politely and talk about the weather maybe, and choose another politician. You can't win everyone either. If you find that there's no magic solutions, there are better and worse ways to do things. But if you come up against someone who's clearly anathema to your position, you're probably not going to get very far. You could ask them more questions about stuff in general, and maybe they end up liking you, and the message they walk away with is scientist actually quite nice, even though evil vaccinator. And that could be enough. That could be a real service that you've done for them and you.
Yeah, exactly. Get off that topic. If they're really antagonistic, talk about something different and just show that you're a human too.
Yeah, you're not. It's not. There's no magic solutions. There's just there's ways and means. But if it looks like a lost battle, that's going to happen. Not to you. You're all going to be fine. But it happens to other people.
Well, I'd love to hear their 60-second science. So this is where we move over to a chance for you to actually do some talking and then practice listening to what a story about your science would be. So think about it like that, a story. So what we're going to do is break this into some heats, some semi-finals, and then a final, and the winner of the day gets massive accolades. I don't know, they get Mentos or life membership to Science Technology Australia. No, I don't think so. That's not even possible.
2.5 years. 32 months worth.
So to break this up, what we're going to do is in your tables, we'll have the heats first in your tables. If you could think for a few minutes, perhaps 5 minutes, you think about how would you tell the story of your science in an and, but, therefore structure. You might think about what we know or what a problem is, and then add a but. You might think about some individual people who are affected by that. Are there stories that you know where someone you know might be affected, or someone who is suffering from whatever it is? Something that might resonate with a politician. It'd be great to listen to all sorts of different perspectives, because every science has its own way of telling the story. So we'll have 5 minutes to think about what you would like to do. You can talk amongst yourselves, and then in your tables, spend 60 seconds pitching to each other your 60-second version of your science. And then once you have all finished, elect from your table a winner. Then we'll have semi-finals where we'll go into the corners and go from a semi-finalist onwards. And then I think we'll have, if we have in the four corners, we'll probably have...
There will be further instruction.
4 finalists and a winner.
So the bottom line is you're planning a 60-second spiel each, every human. You got about 5 minutes to plan it.
Human?
Human, every human. You got 5 minutes to plan it, literally 5 minutes. Then each of you in turn does a 60-second spiel to your table. The table picks a winner, and then we'll
can we lock the doors?
Again.
Those people leaving, I don't
Yeah, lock the doors.
Quick, close them now.
Throw yourself across them. Cowards. No, you're lovely people. 5 minutes, 60-second spiel. Talk to your teammates, so to speak. Actually, your competitors. Any questions? Great. Yeah. Hello, hello. So you've all written or at least penned out your 60-second spiel. Your eyes are bright, your tails are bushy, and you're ready to share. So now, one at a time at your table, deliver your pitch. It's the table's job to vote for the person they think who should represent their table, and or they just want to get rid of and make sure they don't have to do it, so they just vote for someone else. So 60 seconds apiece. Be strict on time because we will be too. 60 seconds. One person at a time. Go! So we're going to divide you into quarters. The room's going to be divided into quarters. Will's going to point, don't worry, we're not going to leave you to work it out. This is a quarter. What we want is the table winners in this quarter of the room, which is what, about 9 tables, to go over here with Emma. The table winners from this quarter of the room to go over here with me. The back quarter of the room go over there with Will, and Jeremy, who's waving his hand. The other corner go in the corner. The idea here is now you deliver your pitch to the other winners and we pick the finalists from each of the 4 quarters of the room. The rest of you can keep enjoying your lives while the other people go and sort of fight for theirs. And then the last 4 people standing will do their 1-minute pitch up here and we will vote for them by accolade who wins. The sacrificial winners. Excellence among excellence.
So how are we going to choose a winner?
I think the tallest person.
The whooping and the hollering?
We'll do the whooping and the hollering. What we'll do is we'll hear from each person. And obviously as scientists, academics and researchers, you're not used to lecterns. Are you happy to use a lectern, people?
So we have 4? We have 4?
Yeah, are you right with that? Or does blank stares mean yes or no? This is the feedback I got. So what we'll hear from each person, they will only go for up to a minute, won't they? Otherwise they're naughty. If you vote for the people who go over a minute, that's encouraging poor behaviour. And we don't want that. So then we will vote by accolade. There'll be a whole bunch of whooping and a hollering, as Will said, to see who wins. And then you win science. Our first speaker is Christopher Casanelli, and he's going to talk to us about something for a minute or less.
Should we clap him on? Just, welcome him up.
Whenever you're ready.
So you all may have heard of the green thumb before. Perhaps you even have a green thumb. I'm sure you've all been out there at some stage and stroked or touched your plants. Well, this is an environmental signal. It can be a stress such as wind or the rubbing of plants. And these stresses, plants can perceive them and they can acclimate to these stresses. And in the face of climate change, in changing environments, be that wind, CO2 or temperature, and in the face of the fact that there's an ever-increasing population, we need to make our plants more productive. We need to make be more sustainable with our resources. And taking plants that can be stressed by touching them and then be more acclimative or stronger to temperature is powerful. I'm a plant molecular biologist at the University of Western Sydney Hawkesbury Institute for the Environment, and I'm trying to understand these processes. And what I'm passionate about is bringing industry more involved. Yes, there are ARC linkage grants out there, but I've got PhD students, and industry sometimes suffers in Australia. So how can you, Senator, help me to bring my research at the Hawkesbury Institute together with industry in a more productive manner? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. 1 minute and 8, we'll let him by with a little bit of that. Next we have one of the ladies. I have no problem with that, but I need to see your name so I can tell people who you are. Your name is Principal Sponsor. Sabrina Heng is going to talk to us now, and it's going to be wonderful. Applause, much applause.
Right, so I'm Sabrina, and so 10 years ago I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. But fortunately enough for me, I was in Boston during that time, and I had the benefit of early disease diagnosis and aggressive treatment, and as a result of which I'm in remission. So I'm now a productive member of society. and I'm able to raise a family, I'm able to do science, and the burden on my family as primary carers have been reduced. So because of that, I'm very, very passionate about developing tools to enable people to diagnose disease early. And that's what we are doing at the ARC Center of Excellence for Nanoscale Biophotonics, where we've assembled a team of chemists, biologists, physicists to do transdisciplinary research, which allows us to create windows into the body to understand diseases at the fundamental level, which would then, as a result, in hopefully early disease diagnosis.
And under time too. Next we have Christopher Burns. I'll get there.
Hi, my name's Chris Burns. I'm a medicinal chemist at the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute in Melbourne. As a child, I had asthma, and I distinctly remember the first day I took Ventolin, and asthma became just an inconvenience rather than a disease that kept me in bed for weeks on end. As a consequence, when I went to university and studied chemistry, I realised that's what I really wanted to do, to design drugs to improve quality of life and treat disease. And over the last 20 years, I've had reasonable success. In fact, the last drug that I was part of the discovery of sold for $500 million. But that was for a Canadian company. What we have in Australia is a real crisis in terms of supporting translational research, supporting medicinal chemistry. We've got fantastic biology, we've got fantastic medical research, but we don't translate that particularly well, and we don't fund translational research, and particularly medicinal chemistry, very well. So that's what I'm looking to find a way to fund that translational research in the best possible way. Thank you.
And on time too. Last and definitely not least, Claire Krauss from the ANU. I'm not biased, but that's a great university.
I hope you've all seen the wonderful Hollywood blockbuster, The Day After Tomorrow. It's a movie about some giant superstorm cells that basically destroy the Northern Hemisphere. And in that movie, Dennis Quaid is a paleoclimatologist, and I am Dennis Quaid. Well, kind of. In the movie, Dennis Quaid uses ice cores to reconstruct climate from the past. I, on the other hand, use stalagmites from caves, and I've been able to produce a 40,000-year-old record of rainfall history from Indonesia using this method. Now, you're probably asking why we actually care about what rainfall was like for the last 40,000 years. Our observations of climate only go back 100 years or so, and we know that climate's been around for much, much longer than this, and that climate's actually quite a slow process. So we need to understand how climate's changed in the past, and our work has been able to help with that. And through understanding how climate has changed in the past, we can understand what its natural variations are and how it might change in the future under climate change.
So can we bring all four of you up on stage, and we'll point one by one to redo your applause so we can hear them really clearly to work out the difference.
Too late for shy now. So if you like them, you've got to bang your hands together until they actually hurt a little bit, because that's how they win science.
All right, let's go in the order that we went. We've got first Christopher. Sabrina.
Ooh.
Next Christopher. And Claire. My feeling was that we've got one there. Give him a round of applause. Christopher Burns. That billion-dollar Canadian company.
It's fair to say that had nothing to do with the fact that he was in my group. That was uncoached. He's a natural. You're all naturals. That was a great job. Thank you for actually getting up here in front of people. I know you're very shy and retiring. But now we're done.
We're pretty much done. We just wanted to say, look, thanks for joining in on that activity. Actually, the chance to talk and to listen to each other's ideas and practice just a little bit before you go and talk to politicians. It's not about winning. I mean, yeah, it's about winning. But it's actually, it's about rehearsing your ideas, seeing what they sound like when they come out of your mouth to an audience that isn't, your normal colleagues, other people out there. As you're at the dinner tonight, practice. Think about it. Think about how you'll get in front of people and how you can tell those stories that might just get people to listen that little bit longer. Thank you.
Thanks very much, folks. We'll see you tonight.
Thank you.
Well, that was great, and I can see the buzz in the room. We got you going towards the end there, and that's fantastic. Thanks to Rod. Well, that's great. And I want you to, while you're packing up, because I know you're all desperate to get out and get your glad rags on tonight for the gala dinner, just join me in thanking they're not all here now, but we've had a great lineup of people present stuff to you today, and the effort that they've all gone into on a volunteer basis to come and present to us today, I think is just absolutely fantastic. So thanks to all of our speakers today.